Alright, so the new cards drop in about 4 or 5 hours, and I know I'm just getting around to making this video right now, but I had so many different things I needed to do. I was working on this alternative account, the Qcento beginner to pro series account that I just finished up with, and I just uploaded a patch notes for 10.4 video, so if you haven't seen that one, go check it out. And for the last 2 episodes of the series, they'll be posted over the next couple days, so stay tuned for those as well. But today we're going to be talking about the 21 new cards that are dropping, and I'm going to bring it into a little bit of a quieter menu here for the music, and then we'll hop right into Reddit. Now, I don't use Reddit. You'll never find me on Reddit. I like to kind of stay in my own bubble. Right, that's what I like to do. So we're on Reddit anyways, but we're not logged in, that's why. Now, let's look at the cards together. So I haven't looked at them at all, right? We're gonna have our own discussion here. If you guys have read a lot about them, if you were there for the live reveals, maybe you can also share your insights. I didn't have time to watch the opens over the weekend because I was working on some other content, right? So that's that. Skellige first. We got Magic Compass. It's a special card with Echo. Look at the top 3 cards in your deck, play one, then move the others to your graveyard. If there are fewer than 3 cards in your deck, spawn and play a legendary Skellige card that is not in your starting deck instead. So it has Echo, meaning you can do this twice, okay? Now, if you're looking to take discards with this, you have to just hope that you top deck into them. Right? Play one, then move the others to your graveyard. So we get to play one of them, which is great and all, but then we're moving 2 others. What happens if we top deck into really good cards? Just a thought, right? What if we are looking for something and then we have to discard it? Or we have to play something when we don't want to play it? I could see this being useful in some situations, but I think more than often, it could be good, like maybe towards the end of things if you're playing Lippy. Like let's say you thin down and then you do it. You're creating and adding legendary cards from the starting faction that you can later recycle and play again. So something to think about. I'd have to see it in play, I'd have to test it for myself, but it is a double-edged sword, right? I don't know if you'd want to use the Echo. I don't love the lottery aspect of it, but I think it's a pretty unique card that has some potential. I just don't really appreciate things that are super high roll, and depending on what this gets, could win you a game. I think it's a little bit better if you come with what you've prepared, and that's how you win a game. So I'm hoping that this doesn't become a problem. But again, we'll see it on patch day, right? Now, Highland Warlord's a human and warrior. It has veteran, that's pretty good. Now, obviously, it's going to go up in power. I would imagine that you want to play these early, though, right? So if King Brand's in your deck, it triggers veteran, so it's going to come out at 4 base power with 1 armor. Sure, round 1. That's when you're going to want to play it. Deploy. Increase the damage of your raid cards by 1 for the rest of the game. So that would include Gutting Slash, that would include Primal Savagery, that would include a Stunning Blow, right? So now Gutting Slash has a 7-point ceiling. I saw a Stunning Blow get changed if it had armor do 7, so now it's going to push it up to 8 points, right? And then you have things like Blood Eagle that could do 3 damage instead of 2, I guess, at this point. Same with Primal Savagery. And then you've got, I wonder, I don't think you're getting additional damage from things like Raiding Fleet, right? I don't think it's going to put 8 bleeding instead of 4, or 5 bleeding instead of 4. I think it's just going to be the same. But everything else, I think it adds up. You could play a couple of these. They are slow tempo plays. So it's one of those things where you have to decide, is it worth it? And that just comes with playing it, I think. Because right now, I find Warriors in particular, like I just played 63 games with Warriors over the past day and a half, right, on this alternative account, and I could speak from experience that Warriors, unless you pull well, have poor tempo compared to other decks in round 1. So if you're looking at like Stockpile Siege, for example, way more tempo, right? For warriors to have good tempo, you need to have King Bran in the deck, you need to have like a raiding fleet or a discard package, and you need to have like your Blood Eagle, for example, to like start funneling cards out. Now, when you have these just playing from hand, especially on blue coin, it feels kind of slow. And having looked at the patch notes, some of the changes that things like dwarves are getting with all the armor, I mean, this will definitely help, but when you have a play like this compared to all those way overtuned buff cards, I don't know if it's going to be enough. So I'm willing to try it. I don't really think it's going to be crazy, but it might make a difference in certain matchups, right? Maybe ones that take a little bit longer to set up, or maybe if we're on red coin, we can establish some carryover for later, right? I'm going to mute so I can sneeze. All right, big sneeze. So that's that. Let's move on to the next one here. We got Scoytel. So Prism Pendant, it's an artifact. I love to see artifacts or new artifacts in play. They're mostly fun. There aren't as many useful ones, but with the locations and stuff like that, there's been more useful artifacts. So we'll see what this is. Whenever you target an allied unit with a special, give it vitality equal to the special's provision cost. Whenever you target an enemy unit with a special, give it bleeding equal to the special provision cost. That sounds kind of slow. Whenever you target an ally with a special, so what, you're going to boost something and then you're going to give it vitality? You're just creating really tall units. Whenever you target enemy, you're going to give it bleeding. And then this card costs 6 provision to put in the deck. I don't love it. And with the change to Bearification, it's not like you're going to be transforming this because you have to keep this on the board. It just feels like a 0-point turn to get some payoff later, that the payoff only really benefits you in like a long round. And Scoytel's got like really good hard control, so this passive control doesn't really feel as necessary. I don't know. I don't love the idea of this card so far. I'm sure someone's going to figure out how to play it well. I might have to try it for myself, right? But again, one of those ones that's kind of Giant Slayer, it's a dwarf. We saw a huge amount of changes to the dwarf's archetype within Scoytel. We talked about it in the other video, but let's see what they have here to add to that even. Deploy, choose an enemy unit. If its base power is higher than self's, gain 3 armor. Okay, so you're just going to be playing this and gaining 3 armor. Barricade. At the end of your turn, damage chosen unit by 1. Death Blow. Gain resilience. So now you have these 2 cards, because people can stack them, right? And these cards are going to be getting resilience, maybe, right? I would say if you play 2, maybe 1 gets. Let's say it's got to be base power higher than self, so it's got to be 5 or above, right? And you got to play this early on. The opponent could pass on this before you get the death blow. What would help with that, though, is obviously the damage here, and then maybe off berserkers and stuff like that, or snipe it with a pyro attack, or take a Yarpin, like stuff like that, in order to get the death blow. But again, because dwarves already have 2 cards with resilience, now they have potential of 4. And this could be scary with all the other provision buffs to dwarfs as well. Like, it makes it that much easier to fit these cards in. Like, the berserkers went down. We had, was it Zoltan that went down? Like, lots of stuff really got that adjustment, so these fit quite nicely in that deck, and I think you'd probably try and run them anyways just to see if you can get that extra payoff, because this times 2 is the 8, right? Plus the Zoltan's 12, plus the Gabor. That's like a perfect situation, but you can imagine almost 20 points of carryover combined. So it gets quite scary. It gets units stacked on a row. It helps set up Brover. It helps set up a 2-0 situation. So, kind of scary if we can get these to work. Shady Vendor. I love to see new Blind Eye cards printed because I like playing Passiflora, so anything that can maybe proc that's really good for me. Prophet 2, Tribute 4. Okay, so we get the Prophet 2, which is kind of nice. Tribute 4, melee, create and play a bronze 4 provision crime. I love it. I love it. I mentioned something like this when I was looking at the change to what's his name. You know what I'm talking about. That card that does that. Create and play a Bronze Syndicate special, or create and play a Bronze Syndicate card. The dude. Anyways, it's 1 a.m., so you know what I'm talking about. But anyways, I wanted to have something like this that was a little bit more cost effective. This is pretty cool. Obviously, it comes with a price, so it's fair. It's not like we're just getting this, Prophet 2, and this, right? We're going to be tributing 2, so realistically, it's tributing... It's tributing 2 instead of 4, but if we're using off the books, it's really like, I guess, in essence, tributing 1, right? Because the less 1 and the 2 here, create and play bronze 4 provision crime. So this could be anything, right? This could be like a fist tech. This could be like a congregation. Like it has a little bit of variety. I believe we're going to be able to choose from 1 of 3, so you could pick whatever best suits the situation at the time. And then, of course, on ranged, Tribute 5, create and play a bronze 5 provision crime. That's really good. Like, that opens up a little bit more, like an eavesdrop or a payday or a stolen mutagens, like stuff like that. Maybe that could even benefit us more so. So I like this. I don't know how effective the Blind Eye is going to be for, let's say, the intended use of this deck. However, I still think the card's pretty good. Maybe this helps set up Collusion because we have now Blind Eyes that we control, which increase the effects of all the other tags that we have on the playing field. So I'm thinking more of like the direction of Collusion, crimes with off the books or line pockets when I look at this card. But again, it might be something else. We can definitely give that one a try throughout the season, right? Conjurers Candle is an artifact. Again, nice to see another artifact for a Syndicate, especially one with Resilience. It gives Profit 5, Fee 1. So there's a fee off of an artifact now. That's pretty interesting. Boost an allied unit by 1. So it's basically guaranteeing a spender here, right? You're getting the 5 coins when you need them in the round that you play this card, and then the next round, it's a spender. So the problem that Syndicate often had was not having a spender available, right? This eliminates that problem. Increase the boost by this card's... So, fee 1, boost an allied unit by 1. Increase the boost by this card's fee cost. Okay. Whenever you pay this card's fee, increase this cost by 1 up to 9. Oh. So it guarantees a spender, but then it starts to cost more every time you use it. Now, it sounds like a really inefficient spender. It doesn't have a cooldown, so I'm assuming that you can use all the fee, like as many coins as you want, right? The same turn. Boost this card's... So increase the boost by this card's fee cost. Does that mean 2 for 2, 3 for 3, 4 for 4? So it's still like a kind of like a 1-for-1 spender, but it gets more difficult to use the more you use it. And since it's an artifact, you can't directly tutor it. I don't know. Like, it could be really good. It might... I don't think it's going to be this good. But we can definitely play it and find out. I'm not overly impressed by this one, but I think the concept's cool, having an artifact that spends. Giant Toad. I guess Thea released this one. Giant Toad. It's a bad picture, though. Like the screenshot. It's a little blurry. But deploy consume an allied unit. When you play a Deathwish unit, summon self from your graveyard to the same row, consume it, and gain doomed. Consume an allied unit. When you play a Deathwish unit, summon self from your graveyard to the same row, and consume it, and gain doomed. So we're getting a consume off of it. And then I guess when we go to the next round, we play a Deathwish unit. This comes out, and then it consumes it live again. And then this gets doomed, so it doesn't repeat itself. This is terrifying for V, right? Because it literally gives us that consume that they can't do anything about it going into like a round 3. And that could be said about any Deathwish unit. Like with Ruin getting a buff, it doesn't give them like a lot of chance to react to it. Like, you know, Ruin at 9 provision now, we play Ruin, this comes out, consumes it, puts this up to 7, Ruin comes back, 11 points, boom, right? There's a couple, like, pretty much anything Deathwish is going to benefit from this, but, like, I could see this with Ruin quite easily, with Succubus quite easily, and with the V decks quite easily, right? I think that this is a good card. Like, really good. I would probably run 2 of these. I don't see why not. It's carryover, it's consumes, it helps with a lot of the problems that Deathwish has, having to float consumes and have them answered, but it does open up something a little bit scary with V, right? And we'll have to see how that goes. I know it'll be a race for points with Dwarves on the playing field, all the resilience, all the big point slams, crazy engines that you might see a lot of like V and stuff like that too, right? Just because they can keep up as far as points are concerned. Throw a couple spores in there, you might be all right, you know? I like that card a lot. Necromancer's Tomb. Whenever you play a bronze unit, summon a random copy of it from your graveyard to the same row and give it doomed. Okay. There's a lot of these, like, floating artifacts going around, eh? That just do stuff passively. It does change the dynamic of the game a little bit. It's a little bit different than what we've been seeing, right? It's going to take some getting used to. Whenever you play a bronze unit, summon a random copy of it from your graveyard to the same row. Like, what would it have to be? It's a bronze, so, like, you wouldn't necessarily want to play this in Relics because Mamuna, and also the Incubus. I'd be curious to see what you guys think this would be good for. I'm lost for an idea of how to play this right now. I think it has a cool principle. I just don't know if it's worth the 8. Like, I guess if you built carryover on something, or whenever you play, is it the same round? Or do you play this like the previous round and then it just works? Like, that's what I'd like to know. Because the other one, for example, has resilience with Conjurers Candle. I'm assuming that this is the same round, though, because it would have said maybe resilience otherwise. But even so, another one of those cards that I'm not overly impressed with the sound of it, but I'd have to see it to believe it, and I'll definitely be playtesting that. Now, Traveling Priestess is cool. We got Cleric, and we got Human Tags. It's got Vial as well. Gain 0 charges whenever this unit's put back in your deck. Increase the number of charges by 3. Zeal. Order. Boost an ally unit by 1, charge 0. So just a charge spender. Whenever the card's put back in your deck, so you could... I guess you could put it back in your deck. I guess you could basically like draw it, put it back, draw it, put it back type thing, and stack them, and then just do like a slam at the end or whatever the case. I wonder if they're trying to go in the direction of like the whole Corvo charges things and like, you know, just It's been a while since I've seen like charge Northern Realms, and I'm not talking about mages, I'm talking about like OG classic charge. So this card's kind of cool. Right now, I think that it involves more setup than like we should be worried about, you know what I mean? Like you've got to really just make this like draw put back a few times to like really get that crazy broken value. So I think it's balanced enough from an initial standpoint. Again, it's one of those things I have to see in play, but I think that's an interesting principle with this card that requires a bit of skill to play. So that looks like it's pretty healthy for the game. Mutant Generator. Cool. Whenever you play a unit on your melee row, boost 5 random units on your side of the battlefield with the same provision cost by 1. Whenever you play a unit on your range row, boost 5 random units in your deck with the same provision by 1. So, to me, this looks like something that you're more often going to be using as carryover. Whenever you, yeah, so random units in your deck with the same provision. But are there really going to be that many? Because what are you going to have the most with, right? Whenever you play unit on the range row, boost 5 units in your deck with the same provision. So if I have 6 cards at 5 provision in the deck, or let's say if you go as far as putting 8 at 4, like how many of them can you play to get the maximum value, right? You'd have to like have exactly 5 4 provision cards in your deck plus whatever's in your hand, and then play like 3 of them to get that 15 boost carryover. And that's like the ceiling, I would say, for this card would be like that 15 points plus whatever the boost to the cards do. But again, that makes you have to really polarize your deck in order to fit all these bronze cards in there and not put any other special cards and just have these bronze units. So I don't know. I'm not overly impressed with it. But again, it has like a high ceiling if I think a deck's built around it, right? If that's how you're going to play it, then it might actually work quite well. We have Obsidian Mirror, which is a tactic card. I love to see more 4 provision tactics added to the game because I feel like Enslave is good and all, but it could be much better. And I feel like with, you know, all the armor going to be coming around this season, there could be a little bit of love for tactics, right? Spawn 1 power copies of 3 bronze enemy units on their opposite row. Well, you take something with an order. You do. And spawn 1 power copies of 3 bronze enemy units on their opposite row. So board state has to be established. They have to have 3 engines that you want because you can't just use the same one 3 times. It's got to be 3 different ones. So worst case scenario, this card plays for 3 points. Best case scenario, it could play for more. Let's say you're playing against like a deck and you're getting like a 1 point per turn boost engine. Well, there's a high ceiling on that. Or if you're playing against, let's say, Skellige, and they have a Raider, and you know it's going to have an order of 2 damage, well, then it trades up quite well. But that's also keeping them alive. Spawning 1 power copies when you're playing against Dwarfs this coming season when they have Berserkers looking to ping off everything, or you're playing against, let's say, Precision Strike, or, you know, Skellige Rain could be a problem too, right? You might see a lot of that to like strip armor off of cards maybe this coming season. So will they stay? I don't know. I think the card's pretty cool. I think the art's pretty cool as well. I'd be interested to play it. I just don't know if it's going to be a healthy substitute to some of the other standard 4 provision cards that you like to have in the tactics slot, right? Like, I think Jousts are just really good. I think Diplos are just really good as well. So I'll be down to try it. I just need to try it to tell you if I love it or not. Prophet Human Cultist. It's cool to see a Cultist for Nilfgaard. On deploy, damage self by 2, then lock all units in your opponent's hand until the end of round. Okay. The next time your opponent plays a locked unit, remove locks from all units in your opponent's hand. Adrenaline 2 locks off instead. So you can't lock their finisher play, right? Because the adrenaline prevents you from doing that. Now, you can't use it too far out either, because then it just unlocks them all. And they'll just play a crappy card. Like, they'll play something that doesn't need to be locked anyways. Like, just a point slam. And then they fix their hand. I don't see the vision. 7 provision 2. And it damages itself by 2 on deploy. Doesn't seem like a very good card. I might be missing something, but I don't think it's that good. Aarondite is Echo, and it's a neutral Echo. This is pretty interesting. Damage an enemy unit by 0, then boost the lowest power allied unit by the excess damage dealt. At the end of your turn, if you have more points than your opponent, increase the damage by 1 wherever this card is. It has Echo. So this card, like, basically depends on a power struggle, right? And that will affect the way that you play the round. Oftentimes, you know, you want to hold points back and play them when the time's right. This sort of takes away that and makes you play around this mechanic. And then you're doing it in 2 rounds. Increase the damage by 1 where the card is. So it has Echo, which is really cool, because I'm guessing on the Echo, it's going to be able to keep whatever you've accrued from the first round. So this is like one of those things where if you can find a deck maybe that has really high tempo, then you might be able to like get out points quickly and then just sort of like have this going and working. I'm really interested to see how it plays. I think it's pretty cool, like I said, if you can really control that. Yeah, I'm interested to try it. I think that's pretty cool. Just the idea of it, right? Arcane Tomb. Zeal, Order, play a special card from your deck, then move self to the opposite row. If there's no space on the opposite row, destroy self, cooldown 1. At the end of your turn, if not, cooldown, destroy self. So we get to draw a card from our deck, a special, and then we get to give them a special. If there's no space on the opposite row, destroy self. So you want to play this in such a way that their row is jammed and that this is going to be like spillover so that they don't get the card back. Because if I'm to play this any other way, we're giving them the opportunity to get a special card from their deck, and I think that's horrible. We're paying to help them too, and there's only one way to stop it. I think that this card's kind of weak. I'm not thrilled about it. Like, I wouldn't feel comfortable playing it just because of the contingency of them needing to swarm in order to not get a free card from their deck. Whereas we paid for this, they're getting something for free. All they're doing is trading a row space, but they've got 18 of those. You know what I mean? So I don't like it. I don't think it's the move. And they might be getting their best special too, which could change the game even more. Mystery Puzzle Box, it's disloyal, so it clogs their side of the board. Deploy, spawn a 7-power Djinn on the opposite row, and choose a card from your hand. Spawn a 7-power Djinn on the opposite row, and choose a card from your hand. Adrenaline 2, spawn a 7-power Djinn on the opposite row, and destroy self instead. Order, pick a card from your hand. At the end of your turn, transform highest provision chosen card into thing from the box, then banish self. Okay. It's gold, so you're playing one of them, right? It's artifact, yeah. It's kind of cool, I guess. You're getting 7 points, and then you're... I really don't see how this is that beneficial, though. You're just transforming a card into this and doing it again, like a Djinn Swarm. They're 7 points, it's 5 provision. It's interesting. This person's saying if they do, they choose a card from their hand, whichever gets the card turned into a thing from the box. They're saying it's a 7 power. Here they're saying 13. I'd have to see it. Either way, it looks kind of cool, kind of interesting, Yu-Gi-Oh! Wise. It'll definitely be played, I'm sure. Vial of Forbidden Knowledge. Zeal, order, boost an allied unit by 4, and give it vitality of 4. At the start of the game, if both players have this card in their deck, summon self to a random allied row and transform. Okay. What is it transforming into? It just says transform. Like to what? I missed something, didn't I? This is an epic 4 provision. Boost 4, vitality 4. They're anticipating a lot of people to run this card if they have this clause. Does transform just mean it puts it out of play? Like it just thins it out and says, nope, no one's using that? That's what it sounds like to me. I'd be curious to see that. Transforms into Unsealed, which has look at your opponent's starting deck, cooldown 1. It's an agreement to open deck lists. I love it. Okay. So this is what you guys are saying about it. That's pretty interesting. I guess with the reveals, they would have showed like what it transformed into on a separate page. You know, I like that because I like playing in tournament settings. I find that, you know, it's better to know what I get into versus like a surprise Yurden. So that's not bad. Not everybody's going to run it. Some decks are going to be Devotion, but you might see us teched into quite a few decks. The people who don't want you to know what's in their deck aren't going to play this card though. Like that's the thing. Right? I think if someone's running a standard list, they might have it just cuz. But that's that. I don't think it's going to be an auto-include for me. I just think it's kind of cool. We're getting down to the last 5 or so here. We've got another special. Ring of Favor. This card starts in your hand. So very similar to the Sunset Wanderers, right? Boost an allied unit by 4. While in hand at the end of your turn, increase the boost by 2. When your opponent passes, banish self from hand and draw a card. When moved to the deck, banish self. Okay. Boost ally by 4. While in hand at a turn, increase the boost by 2. When your opponent passes, banish self from hand and draw a card. So basically, you read this card out and you get a big point slam boost, but if they pass on you expecting this card, then it just replaces itself with the next card on the top of your deck. There is good opportunity in like a late round. Like if they want to force you all the way down to no cards, you could slam this for a lot of points, right? and then it requires like a huge tall punish. Otherwise, you just lose it. You get a card thinned out of your deck, which is not the end of the world either. I'd say it's like it's a more high risk Sunset Wanderers with the flexibility to choose what you boost. But it's certainly more high risk, but it's also more affordable, right? It's 5 provisions less, but you might lose all the points too. So for the high rollers, this is really good. I don't know if it's going to be a stable card because there's so many good echo cards and cards to tutor other cards within the game. Even with the patch notes, we looked at Lady of the Lake getting a rework so that it can tutor like an echo card. So I don't know if we're going to need something like this as well, but I think it's actually really cool. And it's been a while since I've seen some neutral cards that excite me. Cards like this I find are pretty exciting. So I like it. I just don't know if it's going to be amazing when it drops. Now, let's go to Hornet Sensor. Swap the power of the highest and lowest power unit on the battlefield. Wow. Okay. So it's like basically a tall punish plus a boost. Like this could create a 40-point play. Let's say you're playing against Syndicate and they have a Sea Jackal that's boosted to 26 points, or let's call it 25, keep it simple, and you've got like a 1-point token. Sure. You're basically swapping the power of those on the battlefield, so it's either side, right? So you're taking 24 points away from them, you're bringing 24 points on our side of the playing field. This card alone will shut down Sigvald. If you can have last say, like the Sigvald thing will be non-existent if you're running this in your deck, and if a lot of people are playing this, I think it's cool. It's like playing 2 spores at the same. Well, it's like a spores plus a whatever else. You know what I mean? Interesting, but if it doesn't work well, then it plays horribly, right? Let's say they have a 10 power card and we have a 4 power card. Well, then it's not that great. It plays for 6 points. Right? So, something to consider. Another bit of a gamble card. I like cards that consistently play for the same amount of value, but this one should get some good meme value. This might get some good tech value depending on how the meta shapes, and it's not overly expensive to the point where it's not even worth looking at. So, I mean, it's worth a try. I think if it was 9 or 10 provisions, it would probably be out of my eyesight, but at this, it's pretty good. Now, what do we got next? We got, Troll Porter. Deploy melee, banish all cards in your hand, then draw as many cards. So, wow. Another epic too, so you're only playing one of these. Banish all cards in hand, draw as many cards. What do? You use it when your hand's really bad and you've got a few cards left, and it can't get worse. Like, I have a bunch of 4 provision cards that are just really not doing it for a short round 3. I play this and maybe draw a couple golds instead. I don't know. There's better ways to do things like this. Right? There's so many draw and put back type cards in the game that are around the same provision, around the same base power, a little bit less vulnerable. I'd have to see it in play, but I don't anticipate this being really like a crazy thing because it's drawing cards, so it's cards from your starting deck. But we might even banish cards in our hand that are good too. We got to play all our golds first, or all the cards we don't want to lose first, before we play something like this, which seems a little bit slow. You've got Rune Mage, 10 provisions. Okay, we finally got like a really expensive neutral card coming out here. Deploy. For the rest of the game, your create effects show you 5 options instead of 3. Create and play Runestone. I'm so glad that they made the adjustments to the mages, right? They fixed the Banart student, Artusa student, so that you can't play them beside the Rafford's Vengeance, and then also accumulate the patience, because this card is a really good squeeze into that deck. But at the same time, it just centers mainly around Runestone, right? So, you know, Chapter of Wizards, playing Runestones from deck, it encourages that. You know, everything else it doesn't really impact. So we get 4 base body, we get to play a Runestone, which is a 6 provision card. And then off the future Runestones, it'll make them better. And I think one of the reasons why people don't run a lot of Runestones now, or maybe they'll just run 1 instead of 2 now, is because you get 3 choices and they might suck, right? But having 5 is kind of good. It kind of helps with it. I think this card's pretty cool. Uma meta incoming. Yeah, I could see that being like something that people will play more often. I do think Runestone is going to be one of the main focuses for this card, though, because you have Gellert, or Gerhardt rather. You've got, you know, Runestones in deck, Chapter, like all types of stuff like that. So expect that to be a big one. Also, maybe even Nilfgaard, right? This could be one of those things that you say, you know what? It procs Assimilate. Also, when we roll Diplos, we get more options. Yeah? It's not all bad. I think that's a pretty cool card. I like it. And are we really moving on to the last one already? So we have Golden Neckers, a special with 9 provision. Deploy if your starting deck does not have cards with provision cost of 10 or more. Play a unit with a special. Or play a unit, special, and artifact from your deck. So this is like direct support for the Siri Nova decks, right? I don't see why you wouldn't play it like that. It might encourage playing Colgrim more, but then again, I doubt it as much because you're playing like so many cards with this card from deck, and it kind of like works towards thinning when you kind of want to clog more. It's hard to say. I think this would just be cool to introduce more of the series stuff in general. Obviously, it has a condition, right? Nothing with 10 or more provisions. So this limits the type of deck you can have. It limits some of the hero cards you could have. It makes it more of like a mid-range deck. But again, at least it makes maybe mid-range decks viable to an extent, depending on what you build. I think this might be cool in like a Siri Nova, obviously of any variety, but I think there's a couple mid-range decks that you could do with like Northern Realms or like Syndicate that could benefit from this card too. Nilfgaard being another one. I'd be curious to see it. I think it's kind of cool. All in all, guys, after having looked at all the new cards, I have to say I'm not overly impressed. Now, there's a few that are really cool. Don't get me wrong. Like, notable ones, if I can squint and see, I think the Giant Toad's really cool. I like that one quite a bit. Any other ones that really stand out to me? The one with the sword sounded kind of cool. Rune Mage is pretty cool. Like, Golden Necker's pretty cool. A lot of these artifacts seem a little bit slow. And I don't know. Some of the stuff just feels a little bit more high roll. But again, we'll find out when the patch drops, and I'll be playing these things over the first week to see what is good, what I like, what I don't like, and we'll figure out how the meta is going to be shaping. But for now, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think of the patch? Do you like the new cards? What is your favorite card? And what are you looking forward to playing the most this season? And we'll see you soon with a deck guide. Believe it or not, we're getting back into that stuff. That's next on my agenda, would be a deck guide to start the season off properly. See you tomorrow.